Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the Power Platform Clinic. My name is Duncan Boyne. I am a data and applications analyst at a manufacturing company, previously a functional consultant at a Microsoft partner. I'm also the Power BI kind of guy and the founder of the Norfolk Power Platform user group. We have some juicy questions today, but I will let Ian introduce himself first before we dive in.
So yes, I'm Ian Tweedy. I'm a senior technical consultant working for Capgemini, and yeah, today we're going to look at a couple of different things, aren't we, Duncan?
We are indeed. We've had a couple of questions come in that are not as typical as our usual ones. We've had a couple of theoretical questions that are non-clicky and non-coding, but still worth answering and still a massive part of the eco life in the Power Platform. So I will skim over the 3 that we've got, and in what order we're going to do them in is anyone's guess, although we probably should know. So would you recommend obtaining any Microsoft Power Platform certifications? And if so, which ones and why? We've also then got one questioning about consultancy work. So it seems that you've worked at consultancy before. Do you mind sharing about your day-to-day job tasks, which is going to be a very different answer from what I'm going to give to what Ian's going to give, because we are at polar opposite ends of the scale. And then finally, one is, how do you automatically tag emails for DevOps? And I'm going to give a hint for that. The answer is always going to be Power Automate. It's always going to be that. So there. I think we're actually going to start off with a certification one, because my colleague here has tried to collect them like their Pokemon and has quite a number of them. And every other day you will see him posting about having to renew one. So that's where we're going to start.
It's just they're nice to have sometimes. They are nice to have. However, I do think they don't replace experience. I think you need education and you need experience. And sometimes I meet people and they've gone very, very thin, very, very far down just one track, and that's awesome. But it also limits you when you come to look at things like further away, and it kind of gives you a little bit of a Maslow's hammer type of approach, I think. And I don't know if you found that Duncan, where someone's always said, "Oh, Power Automate's the answer," and certificates are good, but I think they're good for doing your own area, but good to do in an area you don't usually do as well.
Mm-hmm.
And give you that breadth of knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. And it's good to have knowledge in areas where you've got colleagues in. So if you do a certification, something that a work colleague is doing, as in part of their day-to-day role, it then gives you the foundational knowledge and the theory behind what they're doing. So when you actually discuss it with them and they show you the practical side of it, you've got that more all-rounder knowledge about an area that you might have seen as a weakness before. And that can be true for a lot of things in Power Platform. That can be making apps. That can be actually more specifically for like Power BI, because we know a lot of Power Platform professionals, if they're doing low code or pro code, they're usually focused on the app side of things and Power Automate, whereas having a decent amount of knowledge or enough functional knowledge about Power BI can actually help in the process when you're designing apps, when you're sorting out Dataverse and you're mapping out those tables, to help bridge the gap to your data analysts, who have then got to then build reports from what you've made, which is I've seen in so many situations where the developers will go gung-ho, make something, and then Power BI, the data analyst, has to kind of like retrofit what they need to get from it to give a more senior level reporting or just reporting in general. And it happens far too often. So we are going to go through a couple of different sections for this. So we're going to talk about the journey, so the journey that you're on in your career. So we're going to go through steps. So we're going to look at the journey of your career and when certifications may come into play, when you want to avoid them, and when you want to go ham on them and get as many as you can. So from my own personal experience, I'm going to quickly share my screen, and I'm sharing my screen because this is the map. So there is a lot of different certifications within Microsoft. This is a certification poster that Microsoft regularly updates, and it is broken down into 6 different sections from infrastructure all the way to security. So I can personally point out the one and only one I've actually done, which is this little bad boy over here, which is a bit small. So I'll show you the badge for it, and this is a PL900. So I'm just over here. But I have taken the PL 200 exam, although it got cancelled halfway through because I was having issues with a certain company that hosts said certifications. I'm not going to name drop because they'll come after me. So the reason I did PL 900 was I was familiar with the Power Platform suite. I've been using Power Automate and Power BI for a number of years, but I went to a Microsoft partner to be a functional consultant and needed a broader knowledge of the whole suite of products. I really enjoyed studying for PL 900. It is very much just learning about what the platform can offer and how to then explain it to others. It's really putting the emphasis on being able to explain, not just understand, but explain what each part does. So you need to get to a level where you could then help someone understand it further. That was right at the start of my career in Power Platform, and then I've got aspirations for some more, but we're going to go to Ian and see where he started his journey and why he did the certificates he did.
Yeah, so I was an IT manager, and I decided I wanted to move across into the kind of the more consulting space. At the time, the organisation I worked for had quite a small budget, and I found I was doing a lot of these things myself, and there becomes that need sometimes where you think, it's a bit like driving a car. Eventually, you want to go and do your driving test. You don't want to drive around all the time, and with an instructor, I might add. But you want to know that you can do the job. But as with driving a car, I think just because you passed the PL 600 or just because you passed the PL 400, that doesn't mean you've necessarily got the scars. You've been through the bad project meetings and you've made the mistakes. And I think that experience side of things is so important. So so I started off by doing all the PL 900s exams. I've got to be honest, Microsoft were giving them away free at the time, and I thought this sounds like a good idea. So I did the full Collector 900 exams as it was at the time, and then I thought, actually, it wasn't that bad. So I then started off doing the next level of exams. So I did some 200s, I did some 400s. I actually can't remember which exam came when. You could look it up on my LinkedIn if you're that desperate to know, but I can't remember which exam came when. But I knew I wanted to know a lot about a lot, and I quite like being able to go deep on quite a few subjects. Mm-hmm. So I did the exams, and then I spent quite a bit of time in my own playgrounds and in my own developer tenant, spinning stuff up, having a play, see what I could do, what can I push, what can I pull, what happens if I do this? Is it possible to get these two things to talk together? I think naturally I just came to the idea of exploring more things, and I guess it just grew. I think the thing to do, though, with this question is, is it something you should do or shouldn't do? I think you really need to ask yourself, what do you enjoy? Because if you enjoy an aspect of your work, then if you can get paid for doing something you enjoy, fantastic. Try and do more of that thing. And if that thing is better with certifications and better with a higher level of knowledge, then go for it. But don't think that certifications are the end of the road. Certifications plus experience makes a good consultant or a good architect. The other thing to think about is it's not all just about one set of skills. Think about your agile certifications and your agile experience and your agile skills. Think about your waterfall. So you're like your Prince 2 type stuff, because as you progress, regardless of how much you resist it, inevitably you're going to come up against some Prince 2 type stuff. You're going to come across against raids, and you're going to come up against risk registers, and you're going to come across against all those kind of things that you have. And we like to pretend don't exist sometimes in the agile world, or we like to pretend don't exist on like a scrum call, but actually they all exist. And I'm a little bit of the belief that every agile project lives inside of a bigger waterfall project somewhere. Purely because someone at some point has had to ask for the budget and then get business sign off. Very rarely do you just have a running tap into your project. So I think it's important to learn about those other things. Other skill sets which I think are crucially important are things like Six Sigma. So I think things like, that are useful and should not be ignored. So don't just focus on Power Platform. Yes, fantastic. But think about all the other aspects of your work. Think about things like TOGAF as well. TOGAF was a really interesting cert. The hardest exam I've ever sat was my TOGAF. But, I think it's worthwhile getting them all.
Going back to one of the things you said about passing a driving test. So I had a great analogy when I was learning to drive. And you are learning to pass the test. You are not learning to drive. You actually learn how to drive once you've passed your test. And that can be said about all of these certifications that we're discussing now. You are passing the theoretical side of it. Having it in a real world use case is completely different, because things very rarely go to the templated view. And quite frankly, if you were just doing out of the box standard things constantly, then most low coders or citizen developers could do it themselves anyway. If all they've got to do is follow what Microsoft Learn says, it's about looking at the limitations, the highs, the lows, the unasked questions like, how will this affect this? Will it, if we dump all of our data here, how's the licensing going to go? And there are so many unanswered questions that you don't get just from the theory. But having that theoretical knowledge to even know what is possible in the first place, to then go and play with, gives you greater scope to learn. Like if you are just going for the practical side, you can only find what you can find. So no matter how long you spend digging, if you haven't been shown something, you are just going to find it by accident or never find it at all. So if you get the theory side and only do the theory side, you'll be able to build out of the box things and do okay and fit use cases like 20% of the time, which is drastically not a lot. And then you need to combine those two to really get that full journey. So speaking of journey, I'm going to get back to my own. So my own plan is that quite early on in looking at certifications and actually being a part of the Power Platform community, I had my eye on solutions architect. Not just as a certification, but as a job role. That is ultimately my end goal at present. I'm going to retake my PL200. That is in the works, because you have to pass either the PL200 or the PL400. So you have to pass either PL200 or PL400 to gain access to be able to even take PL600. PL400 is the developer associate exam, much more looking at the coding side of Power Platform, whereas the PL200 is the functional consultancy side. So it's more of talking to stakeholders, understanding business needs, finding translations and products, as well as actual full level programs that can be used to help customers' needs. And that's much more of a broader, almost a pre-sales sort of role in how that certificate sells itself. You have to have enough technical knowledge to be able to demo it and to actually understand what you would be then asking of the developers. But it is much more a consultative job. That is really what it is. It is a consultative job.
I think there's a lot of base knowledge that comes from those certifications, though, which is why I think it's quite good to do more than one of those. Don't sit in one lane.
Yes, no, I couldn't agree more. Yeah. Like we said, if you can understand what a colleague does, if you are in that consultative side and you're more end user focused, the more you understand of your developers, the more you can actually say to the customers, yes, this is possible, no, this isn't possible, as well as supporting your own development team to say, well, we know this is possible because I've been able to do it myself, so we can do this, or I'm unsure of this because I know from the developer side that things are possible. I'm not sure if we could do this like edge case. And I think that's really important. That is just focused on one lane, which is in the business applications. We're just talking Power Platform, but there is a whole plethora of it. So there are a lot of fundamentals courses, which, just a caveat, every Microsoft certification other than fundamentals needs renewing. So once you take an exam once, you then have to renew after a certain period of time. But with fundamentals, they are done for good. You never have to renew them. So there's quite a few different ones. So two that I've seen a lot of people ask questions about is Azure AI fundamentals, because AI is being drilled down everyone's throat. It is inescapable at the moment. And the more people that understand how it actually works and some of the fundamentals of that, the better, rather than a lot of what gets put out and the bravado of, oh, I'm an AI expert, this is how you do this, this, and this. Well, typing 3 sentences into ChatGPT to give it you an answer is not being AI literate. That's just having very end user knowledge of how to use a glorified search engine. Azure data fundamentals, I cannot recommend this more. Although I haven't passed it myself, I haven't taken it, I've done the practice exam, but just going through the course is great. And the thing with Microsoft is you can do all of the courses for free. It's only the exams you pay for. So all the material, everything is there for you to go and learn about. There's also wonderful YouTube courses that people have done on top of it. You've got stuff on LinkedIn Learning, which, just to name drop, Keith Atherton's done some for, on actual going through one of the certificates. You've got so many. Howdan Rashid does one that he's now put out for free as well. Stuff on YouTube, Udemy, so many places. But for me, as someone who comes from a data background, I am going to be going for my Fabric Analytics Engineer and my Data Analyst certifications this year. I'm actually going to get some more so that I can kind of rival Ian with his plethora of certificates, so that when we present together, I don't say, I've got one, he's got 35. I'd like to say
not
between
quite
us, we've got
35.
Okay, what is it, like 34? Yeah, are we being pedantic now?
It's like 31 or something.
Okay, over 30. Okay, this man has got.
But included in that are the applied skills, and I think the applied skills, once again, going back to that driving test, because the theory with the applied skills was, you've got to get to the right outcome, but actually you've got to get to the right outcome the way Microsoft want you to get to the right outcome, which is more difficult than it sounds. Because I failed one of my applied skills for that reason, and I was like, but my thing works as it's described, but I wasn't following their methodology, and it irritated me. So I failed it. I got 75% or something, but I was like, it works. What's your problem? So I think that driving testing comes back.
Yeah, I agree. So real world uses. So you will see some job roles advertised, and if you're looking on the market at the moment, some of them do have preferences to Microsoft exams. It's not the be and end all. Like, there is a lot of places that don't, and if you've got proven skills, it's not going to come into it. But if they're looking at two CVs and you've done the exact same things, the exact same places, and one of you's got the certificates, that person's getting an interview. It's just how it's going to happen, especially for Microsoft partners who need a certain amount of people qualified to a certain standard to hit their targets from Microsoft. Like, it's not talked about enough, but actually having those certificates in one of those places is really important. I've been part of it. I've seen it. But also they can be quite a useful stopgap, because if you're getting to a place in your career where you are stuck in that rung of the ladder, if you're stuck as a junior, stuck as a mid, and no matter how much more experience you get, you could add 2-3 years, you're still at that same level. Going above and beyond your job role and finding out about a different technology within your space. If you're solely focused on Power Platform and then you start doing some Azure stuff, you can widen your own knowledge. And then when you are then going for that promotion or that other job, you've got like, yes, I'm an expert and I work in this place, but actually I've got this knowledge as well, and be that more broader spectrum. That's it from me. Anything more from you, Ian, on this?
No, I would just say don't be surprised at how often a solution doesn't only incorporate Power Platform. It has an Azure element, or it has, there's knowledge of Entra needed, so like the security exam, or there's knowledge of something else needed. And I think it's very important to get that spread in. So you're not a T with very thin lines. You want to be a T, still focused, but you want to be a T with slightly fatter lines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a deeper foundation. Yes, you can still push into your speciality, but the wider your foundation is, the more of an asset you are in every aspect. Okay, so that's question one wrapped up. We've kind of gone over a little bit of number two, your day-to-day roles as a consultant, because we've broadly talked about the levels on which you get to, but we'll go into a slightly deeper dive. So my role as a functional consultant when I worked at a Microsoft partner was for a very small boutique Microsoft partner, whereas Ian is at a global powerhouse of a company. Although he has had other roles with other companies, he's currently in one of the, well, they've just bought another company, haven't they? Isn't that on the news? Just bought another.
Has that been publicly announced? I wouldn't want to confirm or deny anything. So,
yes.
But yes, so we've got 340,000 employees across the world, covering all kinds of technology stacks, and a massive Power Platform community at Capgemini. And I think it's really quite nice, the fact there's a big community there.
Mhm.
However, day-to-day job-wise, if I think of my role as so often on projects, I'm a senior technical architect or senior solutions architect, or something that involves dealing with the nastier problems. It's working with my developers and helping them through something maybe they haven't done before, or helping them to grow their skills, or to coach them, or to listen to them, or to ask them questions. Now, coaching and mentoring, I'm a firm believer that there's a slight difference in it. So mentoring, where you help guide someone, and coaching, where you ask open questions and let someone guide themselves. And I'm always in favor of helping people realize actually they do know the answer by coaching them. And that's a big part of my role. Another part of my role is speaking to senior stakeholders at the clients and feeding into those reports that ultimately get the bills paid, and feeding into bids and all those kinds of pieces of the jigsaw that make the thing work. The review side of things, I think, is quite important in my role. So knowing a lot about, being able to go deep in a lot of different areas. If I think about one of my current projects, we go quite deep in Azure. We go quite deep on Azure security in particular. We go deep on DevOps, and some of the things we do in DevOps, we've got like 6 or 7 DevOps pipelines which all need to run, together, and they have to go in the right order in order to deploy stuff and different types of components up. And then, I need to go deep into Power Platform. So it's quite interesting, and I get to wear a lot of different hats, which I really enjoy at certainly my level. And I think that's true of any consultant. You're expected to be an expert in a particular area or a particular collection of areas, and therefore you're the go-to person no matter what level you are. So you kind of want to get as much knowledge and experience. And I'm also a great believer that when you're picking your role, or when you're getting a job, or when you're looking at these things, you get paid in 3 forms. No matter what you're doing, you get paid in 3 forms. I think you get paid in hard cash. That stuff that pays your mortgage. You get paid in, feel good factor. Do you enjoy where you work? Do you enjoy the people you're working with? Are you doing a good thing for society? If you think about charity work and things like that, that one tends to be quite a high on there, whilst actually taking home pay is quite low. And then finally, you get experience. So every job has a mix of those 3 things. And, some of them, you get a lot of feel-good factor, and you get a lot of experience, and you get no pay. If I think some of the roles I have, I don't, they're voluntary roles. Some of them, you get lots of play, you get some feel-good factor, and you get lots and lots and lots of experience. And I think if you can get a job where you're getting lots of at least 2 of those things, and some of the 3rd one, I think you're winning. You're absolutely winning. And yes, every day is a school day. Every day is hard work. And if it's not hard work, you're probably not pushing yourself hard enough.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree. So mine is very much the opposite end of the scale. So technically one is. So I've done 2 consultant type jobs. One was as a Power BI consultant, which I feel a lot more senior in than I would in a Power Platform generalistic way. So in that role, it was working for a third-party ERP software company that dealt with Power BI focused things for the ERP software. Although when I would do that, my day-to-day would vary quite a lot, but the general gist of what I would do in a week would be stakeholder engagement, pre-scoping of work, down to sitting with senior stakeholders and actually mapping out what their suite of reports actually wants to look like and what they want from it. I've worked with companies that have a huge global presence in sales, in manufacturing, all sorts of things. But generally, it would be broken up into focus blocks, like the development time, for stakeholder engagement, or generally doing your day-to-day admin tasks, making sure you've kept up with your DevOps tasks, making sure that you're checking for pipelines and for refreshes for your current clients, and managing that whole entire scope, as well as actually just tracking your upcoming work. When you work in a consultancy, if it's anything but small, medium, or large, you need to look at what work is coming up to you. Sometimes you work in a bigger companies, it's all mapped out for you. Sometimes you're at the more small boutique ones where you're sort of selling your own work, getting your own work, but also planning ahead. So if you're in a 2-man team and you know you've got a 6-month project coming up, if another customer says, hey, we've got a small report and he's doing, like, how do you manage all that? And that can come into play a lot more in smaller businesses, whereas the larger ones, you can sometimes have that dictated to you. So that's my Power BI consultant experience. In the Microsoft partner in the functional consultancy role, it was a lot of super user support. So helping super users and trainers within companies understand the platform they're using better, as well as help enable their actual end users. So they would act as like a first line support, and then I would do the second and third line support for our customers. I would be in pre-sales meetings. I would do scoping and scoring of tasks. I worked in an agile environment, so we did a lot of scoring and timekeeping and that level of things, all the way down to delivery and beyond. So full scope consultancy work there, but it was much more of a stakeholder view, get it scored, get it written up properly, give the technical designs to the development team, go through the scoring process, the testing process, and then back off to the customer for delivery. So that was more of a front of house sort of situation. And those day-to-day roles are fairly structured in the way that you're doing it, because you are keeping an eye on your current customers, making sure everyone's happy, looking at project deadlines, like what are we fitting in this time, what is in sprint planning. That's from an agile workspace. Not everyone does agile. You could go somewhere that does waterfall and hate yourself. There's nothing wrong with waterfall if it works for you. I struggle in an environment where it's waterfall.
Yeah, I believe that every project is a mix between the two, because at some point you've got some requirements gathering, and at some point you've got some release work, and you'd be hard pressed to do the release work before you do the requirements gathering, wouldn't you?
That is true. But yes, a good mix of the two is fine. But I feel like
I think they sit within each other, depending on what level you're looking at. I think they all sit within each other somewhere.
Fair.
You can't complete a task before you start it. So ultimately, your task is waterfall.
Well, or unless your task is thinking about typing up your task, then you can complete it without doing it.
I mean, we could go really philosophical.
We're not.
Can't even talk now.
No, we are not going. If you want more information about Agile, there is lots of information online. We could talk Kanban, we could do loads. This is sort of going away from what we actually want to discuss. But day-to-day life can be quite varied, but in a consultancy especially, you are going to get a mix of stakeholders, a mix of companies to help out. Some are going to be small, some are going to be massive. It's so interesting. And I love the mix of doing different things all the time. It really engages my brain. I get to learn so much more. I love it. Not that there's anything wrong with working on a single project for a long time and getting over the line, because there is achievement in that too. From my own personal working experience, I like to be doing lots of little things and mixing them up. So as you can tell, yes, very different experience for me in, but we are both ends of the spectrum. And I think that's all that we've got time for episode 6. I think we're going to move the Azure DevOps to episode 7, so watch out for that. But thank you. And as always, please like, comment, subscribe, do all the things that YouTube tells you so that we can actually get put in front of people.
The algorithm. Hack the algorithm. Put a comment down, even if you don't really want to say anything.
Just say my t-shirt sucks. I'm wearing an Akira t-shirt that is faded and old, but it's anime, and I love it. And a man here is repping a Microsoft Reactor t-shirt like he's a god of Power Platform. He is. God, I want some Microsoft swag. But yes, as always, thank you very much. Keep safe.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye-bye.